All right, we're back here taking your calls now. 276-656-2255 is the number. We've got Aaron Rawls. He's a candidate for city council. How many days is it? Do you count the days before?
No, I know it's like 2 months and
2
change.
months, yeah, change. That's right. But now we're going to open the phone lines up, and Jessica's going to make sure you get put on hold. The number to call is 276-656-2255. And I'd like to have some questions. It's rare. We get candidates that always want to come on and take questions from the public. We do ask you to keep it to the issues. And so we encourage you to call in. Do it now. 276-656-2255 is the number. And folks on Facebook, you can call as well. You might have to find a way to get off Facebook for a second, but just call 276-656-2255. Good evening. Do you have a question for Mr. Rawls?
I have a comment, Charles. As you well know, I don't live in the city. Mr. Rawls, nice to see you, sir.
What do you think of Mr. Rawls so far?
I think so far he's a nice, energetic, outgoing gentleman. I just want to make a quick comment and let the voters call. What I like about this gentleman so far, Charles, I've heard him say nothing but good about Martinsville and the surrounding areas, and he is saying
he could have picked anywhere in the United States, and he picked here.
And he's also saying where he thinks he can make improvements on Martinsville instead of bashing his opponents, and I like that and I respect that. And good luck, sir.
All right, see you. Okay. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hello, how are you?
Okay.
All right, I have a question for Mr. Rawls.
Okay.
Number one, I am very impressed with you.
Thank you.
Very much so. I am a county resident, but I have lots of family and friends and business associates in the city. So the county has as much of invested interest in this as the city, if not more. And my question for you is, what do you think about the city being willing to spend millions of dollars to make sure that their citizens do not get to vote on this?
Well, I want to be accurate and fair to the city. I don't know if they've spent millions on not allowing people to vote. They've certainly said we do not want to vote, and they don't think that that's part of the constitutional process.
At least 100.
1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't like it. I think it's really hard to defend not letting this go to a ballot, honestly. There's not really much more to say about it. As far as I can tell, talking to individuals, it's broadly unpopular.
They're using our money.
Right.
They're using our money to keep us from having a vote.
Yes.
That's almost like putting duct tape on your face.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, it just seems like it feels criminal.
Yeah, it's hard to defend. I do try to be fair to everyone involved. And so Kathy Lawson had mentioned that per the constitutional process so far, in her estimation, and I'm kind of taking her word for this as having been knee deep in the process, we're the only locality that's had to go through this. And I think her stance would be they're trying to figure out if this is actually constitutional or not, so we know how to proceed. Now, is this where I would spend money? No. Would I want people to vote on it? Yes. Do I want to do reversion at all? No. But I do want to at least be fair. And I appreciate the gentleman who mentioned it, not bashing the other candidates. This is not about someone being a bad person or not doing right things. We can all disagree without having to go into negative territory.
Getting tacky, you say?
Yeah.
You're trying to avoid me getting tacky?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I know you've got another question. Go ahead.
Well, no, the only thing I want to point out is that the constitutionality of this, to me, you had the lawmakers in Richmond, the House and the Senate, all passed this law. Both parties, very seldom do you see bipartisan support on anything. And Lord knows how many attorneys was involved in that.
Yep.
And then the governor himself signs it.
Yep.
So
I have some
challenges on a constitutional basis. To me,
I mean, is the Supreme Court going to go against the judicial?
I don't have the slightest clue, but I have some insight.
That doesn't feel right either.
I have some inside knowledge on that. Very surprisingly, I was really shocked and kind of humbled that a couple state representatives called and talked to me for a lot longer than they probably needed to or anything. But I was told that there's a process, and if there's any question about the constitutionality of a bill, and I just learned this yesterday, that there is kind of a separate step that is taken if there's any gray area. and that this bill did not go through that step. So
are they wasting our money?
To the caller's point, it sounds like, yes, this is pretty settled. Well, I'm not a lawyer. And again, I don't want to say something just to be on the record as saying something is that.
So what step did they miss?
They didn't miss a step.
The city.
No. This is the legislative process.
Okay.
Yeah. So someone at the legislative end, so somewhere in the House or in the Virginia Congress would have, if I understood the process right, taken an additional step. And I forget the term the gentleman used, but it did not go through that process, which suggests the constitutionality wasn't really in question.
Okay.
But again, that doesn't mean you can't challenge it, which is what's happening.
But the city might be throwing it down the path to take several more years now.
Possibly. I think, this is my honest opinion.
It's not going to get on the ballot, doesn't look like.
Not in this term. I don't think we're going to hear a word about reversion until after the election, because it's reversion is broadly unpopular as far as I can tell. So the people who are trying to be reelected
Aaron,
probably don't want to talk about it.
In the next 2 months. You know that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to be hard to avoid, but I think that people will try.
This is the most effective, the biggest thing that's happened to government in decades. This is the big one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to think about it from this perspective. And by the way, I'm sorry, what was the caller's name?
This is Mary.
Hey, Mary.
And let me tell you, Mary is the one who was on the Facebook page today. Everybody knows Mary. She can't hide with that voice. She's the one that they took off Facebook because she kept questioning them about this.
Yeah.
Isn't that right, Mary?
Yep. They blocked my comments, and then they came back and just blocked me completely off the Facebook page. So
I'd follow up on that.
are not allowed to speak.
That doesn't.
She's been under attack. Eric Mundy.
Really?
Will not barely lets her speak during a meeting and gets real snarky with her. How about the snarky city manager?
I'll tell you what. Let me back up to her comment and do her question justice. So I mentioned kind of earlier, thinking 5 years down the road, not just 5 minutes. So if I'm not giving people credit for their arguments being earnest, why would they ever want to work with me? How will we ever achieve anything other than petty bickering?
Right.
So that's all I'm trying to do is give everyone's argument fair credit. Doesn't mean I have to agree with it.
Right.
But that's where I'm at. And also remember, we're going to be trying to work with other people, and they want them to be able to look at not just me, but other people we hopefully recruit into city council in the future and say, okay, these are credible, honest people we can work with.
You're trying to create friends, not enemies.
Yeah, we want to get things done. And if we're just going to continuously devolve into bickering, we're never going to get anywhere.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. So then you had another question?
Right. I was at the same city council meeting you were the other day. I know he's the attorney, and he's the assistant city manager, and I don't know what other hats he wears. But I couldn't believe what I saw when he was talking to Danny Turner.
Yeah.
And I apologize about this flying here, but it was so snarky, and I'm like, I thought he worked at the pleasure of city council, and if I had a boss and talked to him that way, I bet you I wouldn't have that job much longer.
Well, let's talk about this.
You gonna be nice about him too?
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to talk about it in a general sense. The way I would go about this, if Mr. Monday is a pretty charming, smart, he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And
he's a smart ass too.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't want to try to assume his intent, but I would say, well, maybe you don't work for me, but your boss does. And boss, do you want to keep your job?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the problem with wearing two hats is you're not quite sure who you're talking to at any given moment. And I'm definitely not questioning his morality or ethics or anything like that. But you can see how it creates issues for the city when someone is, the city attorney, if you've ever read the Virginia Code, is very much a separate, it's like the legal department of the city. And then the assistant city manager is kind of on this other column of duties. And it does say that the city manager has the ability to combine roles where he sees fit, although that's kind of more in the administrative column. And you'd have to go to court. By the way, I did call a Virginia Institute, and they were pretty confounded by this. You'd have to go to court to figure out the actual legality of this, from what I understood. But you probably don't want the legal and the administrative people advising each other. And so you kind of have the city manager or the city attorney
conflict of interest
advising on the administrative end. And even if he's managing it immaculately, I still think there's at least a perception that this isn't quite right, and there's always a lot of room for conflict of interest.
And they're voting. It's 3-2, I think, right now, that he gets to use this contract that's so old.
Yeah.
It's got some old wording in it.
That's unacceptable.
Yeah.
So we can set aside, one of the things that really, really disappointed me is we can set the human being aside from the position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, and as far as I know, Eric has been nothing but awesome to me. Like I've enjoyed talking to him. He's really funny, very smart guy. But that does not mean that it's okay for him to have a bad contract. And one of the city council members had mentioned that, oh, well, anything that's anything that's in the contract that's old or not relevant is null and void. No, that is terrible advice. That is Management 101. It's probably the worst advice I've ever heard publicly stated out loud.
Yeah.
That is not good. That will almost certainly end up costing the city some money.
You've probably done some research. Is he working with a contract right now?
I think so. I looked at the public document. Yeah, and the way I read
But it's
it,
an old one.
yeah,
right?
well, it auto renews,
Okay.
or they choose to renew it, and there are terms that every so often you
And
can.
if y'all fire him, you owe him $100,000 right
Correct.
for that, right?
So we kind of played a little bit of a waiting game, which is, you notice Councilmember Pearson was trying to bring this up pretty doggedly. We'd missed the window to kind of renegotiate penalty free. And so you can renegotiate anytime. Let's be clear about that. But here's the stick. That doesn't mean that Mr. Monday has to renegotiate. He can say no to everything. A negotiation is two ways, and maybe he just says, "Nah, I'm happy with how it's at."
Okay.
And that's his right to do that. So we kind of missed the window to put in a proper document with no penalty to the citizens of Martinsville. And Mr. Turner had mentioned that historically we had another incident where we paid, 90 grand or was the number. I don't know if that's accurate, but I could see this costing us easily $100,000 in the future.
All right.
Yep.
I know you don't want to talk junk, but we got 3 city council.
Hang on. One statement so that people, because we're going a little technical.
Okay.
Everyone has heard the statement, good fences make good neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Good contracts make good business relationships. There's no reason
Right.
not to have one.
Good point.
And very last point, people think you have to have a contract for someone you don't trust or something like that. Actually, what happens is these things last years. You forget who said what. You might forget what the terms were. People might become jaded over time.
Yeah.
That's like a source you can go back to and say, okay, these were my obligations. These were yours. Let's get back on the same page.
Right.
Not having a good contract means we're all over the
You're right
place.
about that.
Yep.
All right. But 3 of them said it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
Well, what I'm saying is, if they don't let him renegotiate, they need to fix that.
Yeah.
And that, shouldn't they get scolded for that?
Yeah, that's negligent behavior.
And Pearson and Turner were for him renegotiating and bringing in another attorney.
And maybe there's some drama there that we don't see where they think that it's strictly a personal attack against him, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that from a business perspective, a basic good management perspective, that was a huge, huge hit for Martinsville.
Yeah.
I think we're going to pay for that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's talk about the paper here, Sunday's paper. They call them the Kitty Commission.
Yeah, I read that.
Is that fair?
It's not unfair.
Okay.
I mean, we've all kind of.
You stood up to them. You actually got up there and pretty much, you were disgusted, right?
You could not have picked a better word. I was disgusted.
Right.
I was good. We've seen those antics out of certain members before, and I can handle those with the typical eye roll or, oh gosh, not again.
Yeah.
It was until the gentleman descended from the table to stand and made this all about himself.
Yeah.
And it's a special kind of person who will disregard every citizen, institution, and city government is somewhat sacred. And I hate to be a nerd about it, but if we can't practice it right here, can we expect it to be practiced right anywhere?
Right.
And to turn it into a carnival so that someone could get a camera pointed at them was absolutely disgusting. And
But you got to work with him too.
I know. Well, I'm gonna keep quiet on that because
You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Part of my vision, you've heard my vision to grow Martinsville, what I think Martinsville can be. The other one is going to work extremely hard, win or lose, in 2024 to make sure we get serious professionals on our council. So, and you know what? I give up on nobody. Like I said, I was at one point in my life somewhat of a wayward, young man.
Yeah.
And there's redemption, and for everyone who wants to grow into it, and I believe that for every single person here who's trying to do this, is maybe they'll look at their actions and realize that to be virtuous, you have to actually practice virtue even when the cameras aren't showing.
You know what he said? That's positive. What was it? Toxic positivity?
I don't know if you could hear, I was having trouble breathing. I was so stunned.
Huh? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
I was so stunned by just several times there, I felt like I was in another dimension. I had a very difficult time catching my breath or making sense of what was happening. I do not know how wanting to address city matters and not turn our government into a circus of personal things that don't.
And it was orchestrated.
And it was completely orchestrated, which is a whole other thing I had a problem with. Is he had apparently been working on that for weeks, and someone actually on Jennifer Street is who showed me the post on social media of him kind of stirring this up. And you were there, I think. Yeah. We had news cameras from outside Martinsville. We had people from Roanoke and all over the place. I mean, he had really tried to turn this into an absolute sideshow for his own benefit, and that's not okay.
Right. That's kind of where you made your stand.
Yeah. I wouldn't have said two words if not for the coming off of the seat. And at least up to that point, yes, it was orchestrated, and yes, it was a fraud. Yes, it was all phony. But at least there was a semblance of council members receiving a complaint until that happened. And then we saw it was really just all about one person.
One of the things I'm concerned about is that opened the door up to bring anybody could come up there. I mean, I don't understand why a customer or the mayor couldn't now come up and say, I had a bad insurance deal with you. Yeah. I think the public needs to know about it. I mean, when does that end?
I know. I agree. At least with the incident with the quilt and Ms. Sharon Brooks Hodge. Yeah. At least in that case, she was actually a member of the city council.
It happened live at the event.
She was the one who actually said or posted the things. This was at a event in her capacity as a city representative. This was a whole nother thing with the council member they were addressing didn't even post the stuff. Yeah. They're just apples and oranges. And if someone wants to come up about something someone did in their capacity as a city council representative, wonderful. But yes, to your point, no, I really don't want customers of, for example, Ms. Lawson coming up to complain about their insurance deals. Right. And you can see quickly how we descend into becoming even more of a place that people are not going to respect. Right. Well, I hope that we do. Yep. So, and Mayor Lawson's a pretty strong lady. I think she can say, you know what, not again. We gave that a try. It was an errant call, bad judgment, but not again.
It became the week's talk.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately,
rather than talking about what cool thing, and this is to your point.
Well, here are the things we missed because of that. We signed a 25-year energy deal for solar power, and I do think it was the right deal for Martinsville, and I'm grateful for all the administrative people who worked to get that done. But I don't think we got the best deal for the city, and I don't know if people are aware of that, but basically signed a deal. They came back and claimed force majeure, which basically says kind of act of God due to COVID. By the way, your rate's now up 30%. And part of the way that this got sold is there's a land deal involved, and we had to act now or we were going to lose the opportunity. And the land was being sold by DuPont for $1. Right. And through all these hours of debates, no one had stopped to say, well, wait, instead of rushing into this, why don't we buy the land for $1? And generally speaking, I'm not really for the city buying land, but in this case, we know we want it for solar. Yeah. Why don't we just buy the land for $1? Why don't we go back and make sure we're getting the best deal and not just say okay to a 30 whatever % rate increase? It might even be closer to 40%.
Maybe stay in control, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a basic management to do stuff like that. And again, I feel slightly dirty, and rightfully so, because the administrative folks probably ran this down and did the numbers, and they probably worked really hard. But like I said, on the technical end of people trying to represent us and make good decisions for Martinsville, the trust just isn't there for me anymore that we're doing that.
Well, I watched the behavior of the electrician and Danny Turner, and again, he was talking down to Danny.
Yeah.
This is city employees and city council. Aren't they in charge of these folks?
Yeah. If I could give Danny a tiny bit of feedback, it's to come prepared with a coherent line of questioning. And because sometimes he kind of comes at things from so many different angles, and I think people they don't know how to come back.
But they've been after Danny. We know Chad is not a Danny fan. Kathy has campaigned against Danny. I saw that happen. Jennifer used to be sidekicks, and now they're not anymore. It's a dysfunctional group.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with all those inner workings.
To me, it looks dysfunctional.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the enterprise is dysfunctional. You can tell by looking at it. Yeah. The way that it functions proves that it's dysfunctional.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like in politics, I can see why you have to try to get along with everybody. I see them trying sometimes, but then they get into these little things, these little tiffling personal issues, and I've been saying it since I've been reporting. Chad and Chad has this problem with Pearson.
I've sensed that.
Yeah.
That's what this largely comes down to is a personal vendetta that can't be let go. It's really sad that we have to involve everyone in the city. And, this gets noticed.
Yeah.
So I was mentioning earlier, we do rely, the way our government's set up, we do rely on money from the state and the federal government. And talking with someone who has a state role, they've noticed that this is not really a safe bet for investing money. And it's not just from the behavior of people, it's also the actions that we've taken. You think of some of the projects where we've put a lot of our effort and our resources into them, and then we've championed them, and then they get done and they are not good.
Yep.
And so people look at that and say, well, geez, why would we send another $10 million that way? And it's a fair question.
Right. So what I hear you saying is we're talking about Richmond, because that's where the pot of money is. You think we need to have a better front, maybe the county and the city.
Yeah.
Working better, looking stronger.
Yep.
And they have to notice this more.
Yeah. I mean, if we can get in the news for achieving a couple cool things, all of a sudden we'll be a lot more attractive place to get grants, funding allocations, et cetera. Absolutely.
Right.
But yeah, if there's nothing but negative news about you, don't you think we're going to get passed over for people who are actually hustling in the right direction?
Because you can't overlook us.
Yep. It's going to be very, very hard for someone to drive into Martinsville and go past the cottages at 5 Points and say, oh yeah, that's a great place for us to give more money to. Right? That was the best we could do. With everything that we invested, as much as we talked, was that the best we could do?
The city got tremendously upset with me when I told them, they saw my Facebook comments, and then they put the story up and got the same comment.
Yeah, I will be completely honest with you. I see Leon's face and my face. Leon has been amazing every time I've ever worked with him. And I feel like I'm being unjustly mean to him. But they're just not defensible. The price point's not defensible. The location is not defensible. The way they've been laid out on the land is not defensible. The way you get to them.
Do you think they would ever allow anybody else to build that close to the road?
No. Well, no. You can't by ordinance.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, that's the first sin there.
Yep. I just wish they would have. My job is basically problem solving. I create solutions for. I could bring that back. And here's the thing that I say to people is, everything's possible. How much money do you want to spend? I'm not saying we could save that, but we could redeem that a little bit. But even little things like, if we could have just maybe kind of built them in a little circle or something, you know, if we could have laid them out a little bit better and just a little bit more off the street. Now, I know that there are going to be technical reasons that we only had so much space or something, and that's the way it had to be. And I get that, but there's no want for land in Martinsville. There's a lot of land here. And to be quite frank, if it came to that or nothing, it's nothing. I mean, let's hold out for the next best opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Does it look desperate?
It looks bad. So I'm very active in real estate, and I have people talking to me about those things all the time. I actually went and looked in one, snapped photos, and until you're in them, and you actually see the view from your living room, the view from your bedroom, and it's so loud in your living room, your view is constantly cars going by all the time, and it's very loud. The bedroom is, depending which house you're in, an electric workshop with guys loading trucks all the time, or maybe it's literally just a little bit of vinyl siding of the house that's 5 feet away from you. They're not good, and part of the problem I have with them is that we're kind of pitching them as investments. So if you read the little flyer, it's like, stop renting and become an owner and make an investment in this today. And those are not investments for anybody. Those are not going to gain value. They're just not. Right. I'm really sorry about that, but they're not. And there are so many things we can do. I'm extremely passionate about helping people go from renting to owning and building some wealth. It's the best way for people to build wealth is to own a home. I want to do that. That's not the way to do it.
And housing prices are pretty decent here, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. That's the whole key. That's the whole pitch for Martinsville, is that people will endure a lot of things. They will endure all the things that we have in the news here if they can get into a home at a reasonable price. Home ownership is the way that people will pursue that at almost any other cost. Their entire generations, like my generation's been more or less locked out of it. You're not buying a house in Denver. You've lost your mind. You're not buying a house in any of these other cities. Yeah. We have a lot of people moving here because it's affordable.
Gotcha.
I want to give city a little bit of credit. I do feel really bad for having to kind of go into this, but I admit it's warranted. Their mind is in the right place. We're trying to build more housing to bring more people here. Right. But here's the thing, and this is why we got to have competence in our government. The idea is the easy part. The execution is where the rubber meets the road. We need people who know how to do this.
Gotcha. Are you the guy?
I can help. here's the thing. It's not all one person. I know the people who will make this happen. So I created a group called Affordable Martinsville, and I got some of the sharpest people in the world who are helping with this. And it's a cross-functional group. It makes all the sense in the world when I explain it. It's a realtor, an appraiser, it's an investor, it's someone who's remodeled a bunch of houses, it's contractors, it's HVAC guys. So we can get this group of people who are informed from every which way you come at a project. We can go around, pick the houses that can be saved. We do it as a nonprofit. So that way we can hopefully get the homes for really cheap. You can fix them up. And I have a cookie cutter approach, 30 or 40 grand for all of these. I've done several pretty impressive projects here in Martinsville. Roof, HVAC, flooring, appliances. I mean, we're talking about making these things essentially brand new and trying to, it's very ambitious with where costs are at now. So the vision has changed a little bit, but the original goal was to try and sell them between 75 and 100K.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you're a nonprofit, you don't have to try and squeeze a margin out of that.
Gotcha.
It can be done. And it's a bulwark against what I was talking about earlier, which is if we can beat some of these investment vehicles, because they're waiting for the next downturn. If you read the articles, if we can beat some of these guys to the punch, we can really make a difference. There are other ways we can stop them too, by the way, which is more technical than anyone wants to get into.
Right.
But I will say this, and it's something that someone out there might be interested in, because we talk a lot about slum landlords not being held accountable, property maintenance not getting done. And then we kind of sometimes blame the ordinances for, well, the way the ordinance is written. Do you know who writes our ordinances?
Eric Mundy?
We do.
We do. Okay. I got
Yeah.
We can change it.
So
Yeah.
I've been benchmarking what other cities do, and I've benchmarked cities comparable to Martinsville, and from North Dakota and I mean Iowa and wherever. I've also benchmarked what crazy cities are doing with like New York and Atlanta. And when I say crazy, these are people who have, like I said, being in a time machine earlier, we can see what's going to happen in Martinsville by looking at places like Atlanta. They are now having to stop these things by putting in ordinances such as rental density ordinances, which means you can only have a certain number of rental properties per, zone or however you want to define it.
Right.
And so you have to start coming up with these one-size-all policies that probably cause almost as much harm as they do good to try and fix a problem. So yeah, I'm extremely passionate about trying to head this off. And by the way, as a byproduct, we get people into homes, we grow Martinsville, we help our citizens grow wealth. Like, there's just nothing but upside to doing stuff like this. And then, icing on the cake, we can be put in a newspaper as the model for where this was done right, where all over the country people are struggling with homeownership, people getting priced out of their localities. Here's a place that's done it right.
So we need several good stories to tell.
Yeah,
That make us
and
unique.
we've got them. We do have them.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. If people want to get involved in your campaign, how do they do it?
Please, 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 please email me, call me.
Where is that?
Email, let's do Aaron, Aaron,
Okay.
at
Okay.
for Martinsville. That's FOR.
Okay.
Martinsville.
Okay.
.com.
Easy.
And then my phone is 276-229-0617. And that's going to be a Google number, so you have to say your name when you call. And that I get like 600. I'm sadly not exaggerating. Spam calls a day.
Right.
So that thing lets me know who's calling. I can actually pick up.
So say something.
Yeah. Just let me know your name. Right. I've already engaged a lot of people, and we're talking about people who, by all rights, should be sitting here instead of me.
Right.
We've got a gentleman.
They just won't step up, will it?
No, they will step up.
Okay.
Like I said, right now it's nothing but risk to people to join this kind of chaos. but if we can get a couple people talking sense, all of a sudden it will energize these really skilled people. And I don't want to say anyone's names because maybe they're even more private than me. But there's a gentleman who lives on Oakdale Street. He's one of my neighbors. He remodeled his house and put me to shame. I mean, it's a small house, but the things he did with it, I mean, you'd think he lives in a mansion. It's unbelievable. But he participated in the revitalization of Greenville. And now this guy's experience and ideas, if we could do half of what they did, you wouldn't even recognize this place. And I mean that in a good way. If people are scared of some change or trying to turn Martinsville into something it's not, that's not what this is about. We're talking about growing a few thousand more people. And what we do when we get that, do you not like having as many restaurants as you might like? A few thousand more people will certainly help us support that. More shopping, more parks, more trails, you name it, more groups, more fun, more neighbors you can make friends with. Right. There's nothing but upside to doing this, and we don't have to jeopardize our identity to do that.
Right. Anything else you want to say that we hadn't talked about? I know we definitely can bring it back.
I would love to do that. I appreciate you giving me so much time. I appreciate you letting me talk a lot. I feel like I rambled a lot.
That's what
thank
you do. You like that, don't you?
I do. Well, this is all I do is talk about this pretty much all day, every day. Yeah.
How about the media? What questions are we not asking sometimes? What should we be doing? Sometimes we.
Do you know what would be very good for Martinsville? And I want to give credit to the Martinsville Bulletin. We have a legacy of being a good place to go if you want to pull some money out and run away. Mm-hmm. And some good investigative journalism into what's actually going on in some of these transactions.
Right.
The Bulletin had a couple good stories about some of the COVID relief money, mm-hmm. which, that's money that was meant for businesses and individuals who struggled mightily during COVID. It should not be going to people who showed up at Martinsville when we happen to have a few $million dropped on our door. Mm-hmm. So I'd really like to run down the facts of what is actually happening in some of these, you hear it referred to as like closed door scenarios or negotiated in private situations. Right. We could get some more details reported on that. And one thing I've heard from a few people who have been, advising me or texting me is that keep it short, keep it simple, only give people, a 3-word response. I think our citizens want to know more than that. Mm-hmm. I think they can handle some technical reporting, and I think that they will find the investigatory nature of this really, really fascinating, because I was fascinated by it. Mm-hmm. And I've heard a lot of people talk about their reporting on the COVID money. Mm-hmm. And so I think if we could run down a few other things.
Well, one thing we have, they haven't spent that 4.5, have they?
No, this is my hunch. It won't be spent until after the election, right. Because it's going to be pretty toxic. Yeah. So
talking about toxic, right?
Oh, it's going to be toxic. If they do what I think is planned, and that doesn't mean they have ill intent. I think the execution.
Well, if you get on city council, you can have a say in it.
I hope to have a say. Yeah. Here's the thing: is we need 3 votes, and my hope, somewhat. I don't want to be immodest. I'm hoping I can present a rational case, and maybe we swing a vote.
In politics, you got to have 3 votes. Right?
Yeah. So I'm hoping that on our 5-person council, we can get 3 votes for some of this common sense stuff. Some of the thing is, and where we get into the investigatory journalism is, it's not always the city council who's kind of influencing, and I don't want to say pulling the strings. I don't think it's that dramatic, but sometimes these ideas or this push comes from other places, and the city might say, okay, that sounds good. And it might be good to know where some of these things actually originate from. So that COVID money, the uses for it, I don't think that originated from the city, would be my guess, and I'd love to be a journalist who investigated it.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, it's been a fascinating few minutes with just talking to you.
It went by like 5. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And let's give out your number again. 229-0617.
Yep. That's a Google number. You'll have to dial the whole thing.
Yep.
Yep. It's not a local number.
Yep.
Yep.
These days you got to dial it out anyway.
I also have a Facebook, which I've never used. So if you want to Facebook stalk me, Aaron Rawls. All my friends are fake. It's hard to tell who's real and who's fake on there. Uh-huh. But I'll eventually, I've created a bunch of videos to do some of these.
Let me take a quick call here.
Yeah.
Go ahead, you're on the air.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would like to ask Aaron, most people that run for city council and stuff, they talk all this good talk. But once they get in there, you don't hear nothing no more, and everything stay the same. So, what do you think about that?
You're 100% right. I have heard that probably like 24 times. Here's the promise I make to people, because people do talk a big game. At the very least, this is the pitch I'll leave you with. I have good judgment. I'll make good decisions for everyone in Martinsville. And if nothing else, I'll give you that. And I'm going to hustle on everything else. But I think if you compare that to what we've got now, it's still an attractive option.
Perfect. All right, we're going to end right there. Jessica, if you could check, I think our next guest might be outside. We'll be right back. Stay with us.